Guys, welcome back to another episode of Before the First Cast. Boy, I'm super excited to be back. Last week I had the plague and it was awful. It's so good to be back with you guys. I really appreciate Brian and Jared doing the interview for us last week. Um, but happy Friday, everybody. I hope everybody's week has been great. I hope this week that you guys are going to go out there and absolutely smash them this weekend. It's been funky here in Virginia where it's been super cold, snowing. But next week it's going to be in the 60s. So I hope you guys go out there and just absolutely crush them. Guys, I want to take a minute and give a shout out to all the people who messaged me or messaged the Basscast, just asked or sending prayers and sending a heartfelt, you know, just hoping I feel better and get better. It was a long, rough sickness, but we got through it and we're back. Um, this week, this is supposed to look a little different. It's the Friday after Valentine's Day. I had a different video planned in mind, but we filmed it and didn't have any sound. So it's just gonna be me today. So I hope that's okay with everybody. So I want to talk to you guys about February bass fishing. Where can I find bass, or where can you find bass, and how can you find bass? Um, as we know, winter is in full swing. We're having very cold nights, very cold days. May not look that way, coming up this next week because we'll be in the 60s and it'll feel kind of like a spring. It's a spring teaser. Um, but think about the weather patterns that we've had here recently and from January into February. Places that normally don't get snow have gotten snow, like Louisiana, Florida. They never ever find themselves in snow. So I'm sure it was a very interesting thing for those people in Louisiana and Florida to see snow. Um, so let's get started by talking about where do bass go into the wintertime. Um, the unique thing about bass is you can find them in all different stages of the water column in the winter. Not all bass go to the backs of the creeks to feed, but you will have bass that stay there year round. They're called resident bass. Um, Believe it or not, you also have bass that stay shallow. Um, for all my shallow guys out there, you can catch them all year round shallow. Contrary to what people say, oh, they're sitting in 40, 50, 60 feet of water in the wintertime. There's always bass that are going to be shallow. That's just where they live. Um, so when the bass are in the backs of the creeks and the backs of the pockets, your best place to catch them or find the bass would be on your isolated structure, your cover, like wood, docks, what might be a rock pile they're setting on, just any structure that's isolated. This time of year, you can catch them. So, majority of the bass that are caught in the winter are going to be caught in your more of your main stem of the lake, which is your main lake channels, your just out in the open main lake, whatever that looks like for your lake, your main drag, whether it be a major creek or a major river channel. Um, the next question I have: do you catch these bass deep? Yes, you're going to catch these bass in 25 to 30 feet if you're on the main lake channel. Um, Look for stuff that's really special to that deep water. I can't tell you how many times we would be fishing deep, and you would see this random group of bass. In my head, I'm like, I have a thought process in my head. Why are these bass there? You know, what is, what structure or what are these bass holding um, to make them be there? So throughout my years of fishing and a lot of research and study, I've found there's some sort of structure in that deep water that the bass know that's there and they migrate to feed. So whether that be say a roadbed, whether that say whether say there's a rock pile. So what they use is they use this as a migration point to come back to when they're up shallow feeding throughout the day or in the morning, and then they use that cover to get back to um their deep water access. There could be channels running through the deep water, some sort of vertical structure bank. This time of year, a lot of bass love to hang against bluff walls because it gives them that structure. That's a step up structure. Excuse me. Still got a cough from the sickness I had. You know, also bass use flats to migrate this time of year from so they use flats to feed up on. They'll trap the bait fish on flats and they'll ambush the bait fish. It's pretty interesting how bass's mind works. I wish I understood them better than actually we do. Um, they use vertical drops offs like the block. Uh, can't speak. The bluff walls. Um, they use that to kind of relax after feeding, because feeding can be a stressful time for the bass. So piggyback off of that, where are or what are some of the key times in the winter to fish or catch bass? Um, Believe it or not, one of the key times is first thing in the morning. I know you're thinking first thing in the morning is super cold. You would not expect the bass to be very active, and you would expect them to be pretty lethargic and just kind of rip. But contrary to what you believe, bass are super active in the morning in the wintertime because they are looking for bait fish to feed after a late night of not eating. Um, Most of the bait fish are kind of lethargic, so it's an easy meal for the bass during the morning. Um, the next key time is the midday. Something happens during the midday. It's like a lunch bell for the bass. It just goes off, and they're like humans. They are hungry. They're ready to eat, and they get hungry after breakfast, and they need a meal to carry them from that breakfast meal they had to dinner. Um, which like humans, they like to eat, which makes sense. Um, the last time that you can get a really good fish fish catching bite is just right before dark. This is where the bass really they will come up and try to feed for their last meal of the day. Because they don't really feed throughout the night. Um, and this is like their late night dinner, late night snack that will hold them over to the next day. During the winter months, it could also help you by upsizing your bait. In the winter, bass eat a lot of gizzard shad. Um, in 38 to 40-degree weather, it may not eat again for days. So if they eat a big gizzard shad, they may be filled up for days upon days. But if they're eating little small, would be ally or some other small bait fish, they're gonna need to eat sufficient 3 meals a day. Um, but if they eat a big gizzard, they could go, you know, days without eating again because their metabolism is slowed down and it takes longer for the food to break down. Um, so in the wintertime, it's key to throw a bigger bait because most of your bass are looking for that one meal that's going to hold them over for 1, 2, 3 days. Um, and I know here in Virginia, I know the mag draft, mega bass mag draft bite's going to get really good here soon, especially on docks because the fish are looking for that big bait. Um, and we're so close to the pre-spawn too. The water temperatures are starting to rise again. We're gonna start getting into those warmer days, and the pre-spawn is coming, um, probably beginning of March, end of February. Um, but yeah, some baits I would recommend. The jerk bait is really good this time of year. Believe it or not, what people won't tell you is the crankbait bite is also very good, because it depends on how you retrieve your crankbait. I would recommend a slow retrieve, um, because the bass are really slow these days, and they just really kind of want a slower presentation. Um, of course, you're gonna have your minnow bite. You're always gonna have those fish that are gonna bite the minnow, or minnow shaking. But it may be a little bit slower than normal because those bass really are just lethargic and not really wanting to eat. Um, your A rig, your Alabama rig, if you could throw it in your state, they will chase an A rig down because it looks like a big meal to them. Trying to think. Yeah, anything that imitates a bait fish. So your jigs, I would recommend honestly probably a football head kind of jig with a crawl trailer on it. Uh, this time of year, the orange Bama crawl colors seem seem to do very well on fisheries with a lot of rock, um, because crawfish are coming out as well, and that's a big source of forage for bass. Um, but yeah, I hope this helps you guys in your trips out in February. I know February's almost over. I tried to get this out a little earlier than the end of February, but again, in the winter months, guys, always stay safe. Wear your life vests. Bundle up during these days because it can be chilly. Um, and just keep fishing. Always grinding. Um, but again, if you don't subscribe to this podcast and you like what you hear, definitely go over to Spreaker or Apple or any of your um, podcast listening um, forums and definitely subscribe to us. Also, if you don't follow our newsletter on the line with thebasscast.com, go over and follow that. We have some great writers that have great stories. We have one released every first and every 15th of the month. So you get two articles. Well, really, you get two articles a month from three different writers. You also have giveaways over there. You have games you can play. There's a ton of stuff you can do on the newsletter. So go subscribe if you don't already. Um, but other than that, guys, go out there this weekend. Absolutely crush on them. We would love to see some pictures if you guys have it. Um, but yeah, tight lines, guys. And before the first cast, uh, for your host, Calvin, we appreciate you and tight lines. Until the next one, see you guys later.